Shading tattoos doesn't have to be intimidating if you know what you're doing, so in this video I'm going to teach you how to create soft shading easily with minimal damage to the skin.
Kept you waiting, huh?
Shading is pressure based and it takes time to build up layer by layer. If you're using fake skin to practice, you're gonna have a harder time shading properly as the silicone rubber it's made of is tougher and doesn't saturate as easily as human skin does. But you should still give it a go just to get used to the hand movement, speed, and just keeping the machine steady. The first thing I want you to do is imagine you're in a dusty room, you have a broom in your hand, and you just want to sweep the floor. I know it sounds silly, but trust me, I'll make it make sense. If you want to sweep the dust away from you, you're going to touch the floor, push, and then lift up in a sweeping motion. If you want to sweep the dust closer to you, perhaps to sweep it into the dustpan, you're going to touch the floor, pull and lift up. If you want to sweep the center of the floor, you're going to use a pendulating motion where you touch the floor in the center, then lift up on the sides. In terms of pressure, we obviously want the broom to be touching the floor so that all of the dust gets swept away. If we're barely touching the floor, we're not going to clean it properly, while if we push down too hard, we'll also end up not sweeping the floor properly, but instead scratching and damaging it. So once again, whether you're tattooing, sweeping the floor, or just writing your name down on a piece of paper, the pressure we need to use is somewhere in the middle, and the goal is for the ink to get into the dermis, so take your time building it up and don't try to go in very deep, as shading is not about pulling one pass shades, but about slowly building them up. One of the best ways to shade is called pendulum shading, which is the technique we saw a minute ago. Practice this technique and try to become as comfortable as possible with it. Remember, you're in control of the needle, so try out different shapes, and if you're not happy with the saturation after the first pass, you can just do another light pass over the area that needs it and slowly build it up. If you're finding this video helpful so far, please take a second to poke that like button as it helps the channel reach more people who might need it. If you want to make it even softer and more saturated, you can try cross-hatching like this while applying slightly less pressure than with the previous pass. Because shading is done through layering, this means you're going to have to go over it multiple times. So in order to minimize the damage done to the skin, we use a technique called grey wash, where we create the different tones we need by diluting black ink in different quantities using distilled water. For my own black and grey realism, I use 4 medium-sized ink cups, and this is my super high-level top secret recipe. First one is 1 to 4 drops depending on the design. Second one is roughly 50% ink. Third one is roughly 75% ink. And the last one is just pure black. Now all you have to do is just fill the rest of the ink cup with distilled water, and now you have from left to right pure black, dark grey, medium grey and light grey. So now you can build up darker tones with less damage to the skin. Just remember, this is my own personal recipe that works for me and my style, so try to experiment with different quantities in order to get the tones that you need. And never buy pre-made grey wash sets because they're just a waste of money and you can get better results by preparing your own set. You can also use pendulum shading to blend different tones together. Some people like to start with the darker tones and add the lighter tones after, but I personally prefer starting with the light tones and then layering the darker tones on top of that. There is no right or wrong way of doing it, so try it both ways and use what you're most comfortable with. When it comes to needle size, other than the obvious differences, it's worth noting that smaller needles will saturate the skin quicker than larger needles, but larger needles will produce softer shading, so try out different size needles for different situations and designs. What about speed? Well, speed is subjective to the artist, so you have to experiment with different speeds to find the one you're most comfortable with. But if you're a beginner, I recommend starting with a slower speed, so maybe around 7 volts, as higher speeds can actually damage the skin quicker if you're inexperienced. If you need to shade an area using a line as the base, just like I was telling you in the packing lesson, start shading on the line and not above it, otherwise you're gonna end up with a small gap between the line and your shading. That's it for today. Thank you very much for watching and for supporting Tattoo Arts Unlocked, and I hope my videos can help you guys get closer to becoming the great tattoo artist I know you deserve to be. I love you all, see you in the next video.